is she?
Serena, I can explain.
Serena's hands are shaking. She slams a phone on the table. A text on the screen, a woman's name, a kiss emoji. Who is she, Damien? And don't lie to me. Damien opens his mouth, closes it, looks away. Do you have a child with her? Silence. The loudest silence of her life. She grabs her keys and walks out. The day Serena found out her whole life was a lie, she was standing in the middle of that supermarket, holding the birthday cake with the name Damien written in blue icing, smiling at her phone screen. She had been planning a surprise party for her boyfriend. She had taken the day off work. She had told her best friend Rachel to come early. She had even bought a new dress, a red one because red was his favorite color on her. And then a woman walked up to her. A beautiful woman with braided hair and a sleeping baby tied to her back. A woman with tired eyes and a gold ring on her finger. A woman who looked at Serena's phone screen, at the photo of Damien that Serena used as her wallpaper, and said the words that cracked Serena's world like a glass dropped on ceramic tiles. Is that your boyfriend? Serena had laughed. Of course she had laughed. Because what kind of question was that? She had nodded, proudly, the way someone nods when they know the answer and they want everyone to know they know. But the woman did not smile back. She looked down at the baby on her back. Then she looked back up at Serena and she said very quietly, "He is my husband. We have been married for 3 years. And that baby on my back, that is his son." The birthday cake almost fell from Serena's hands. And suddenly, the receipt from the Harbor Grill made complete and devastating sense. Let us go back further. Because every story has a beginning, and Serena's story began 5 years ago, on a rainy Tuesday evening in Lagos, at a bus stop in Lekki Phase 1. Serena Cole was 24 years old then. She had just finished her NYSC. She had just gotten her first real job at a consulting firm on Adeola Odiku Street. And she was standing at a bus stop getting soaked by Lagos rain because she had forgotten her umbrella again. Which was something she did at least twice every week because she was the kind of person who always believed the rain would stop before it actually stopped. That was when Damien Hart appeared. He was 31, tall, and driving a dark blue Toyota Camry that looked new and smelled like leather and expensive cologne when he wound down the window. He was not the kind of man who stopped to help strangers in the rain. He would tell Serena this himself later on their third date. He would say, "I don't know what came over me. I just saw you and I stopped." And Serena, who had grown up watching Nollywood films and reading romance novels, had believed every single word. He gave her a ride to her bus stop. He asked for her number before she got out. He texted her that same night, which was a good sign, because men who were interested texted the same night, and men who were not interested texted 3 days later to ask, "How far, how you day?" Damien sent a full paragraph. He said he hoped she got home dry. He said he had been thinking about her smile. Serena showed the text to Rachel 3 times. And so it began. Slowly at first, the way all good things begin. Carefully, like someone testing hot soup with the tip of their tongue before taking a full sip. They talked on the phone every night. They went to Mr. Biggs, then to Terra Culture, then to a rooftop restaurant in Ikoyi where the lights of Lagos sparkled below them like scattered diamonds, and Damien held her hand across the table and told her she was the most interesting woman he had ever met. By the time 6 months had passed, Serena had stopped looking at other men. By the time 1 year had passed, she had brought Damien home to meet her mother. By the time 2 years had passed, she had started dreaming about the kind of wedding she wanted. Outdoor with lots of flowers, somewhere with a view. She never once suspected anything. That was the thing about Damien Hart. He was very, very good at being 2 things at once. He worked in oil and gas, which explained the money, the car, and the long disappearances. Oil and gas men traveled. They went to Abuja for meetings, to Port Harcourt for site inspections, to London for conferences. When Damien disappeared for a week, Serena did not think it was strange. When he sometimes did not answer his phone late at night, she told herself he was sleeping. When he never took her to his house, not once in 5 years, she accepted the explanation he gave in the beginning, that he was staying in a company apartment and it was not appropriate for guests. She had even been proud of herself for not being the kind of girlfriend who pressed too much. She had told Rachel, "I trust him. I don't need to know everything." Rachel had given her a look, the kind of look that contains an entire lecture inside it, but Serena had waved it away. What nobody tells you about being deceived by someone you love is that the deception only works because you are choosing at some level to believe. Not because you are stupid, but because believing is easier than the alternative. Because the alternative means that the last 5 years of your life, every phone call, every date, every time you fell asleep thinking of him, was built on sand. Serena had chosen to believe. And Damien had let her choose it. The woman's name was Miriam. She and Serena stood in that supermarket aisle for a long time, neither of them quite knowing what to do with the information that was now sitting between them like a heavy, ugly box neither of them had asked to receive. The baby on Miriam's back was sleeping peacefully, unbothered by the way his existence was currently dismantling another woman's life. Miriam was not crying. That surprised Serena. She had expected tears or anger or maybe screaming, the kind of scene that would have drawn a crowd and ended up on someone's Instagram story. But Miriam just looked exhausted. Like this was not a surprise to her. Like she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "How long?" Miriam asked. 5 years, Serena said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Far away. Miriam closed her eyes briefly. "He told me he had nobody. Before we got married, I asked him. He looked me in the eye and said he had nobody." Serena thought about the night she had asked Damien the same thing, in the first month of their relationship, when things were still new and slightly awkward. He had looked her in the eye too. He had said the same words. He had been very convincing. He was always very convincing. "Do you know where he is today?" Miriam asked. Serena looked down at the birthday cake in her hands. His name was still there in blue icing. "He thinks I'm planning a surprise party for him. He's supposed to come to my apartment at 6. Miriam looked at the cake. Then she looked at Serena. And then something shifted in Miriam's tired face. Not anger, not sadness, something else entirely. "Then let him come," Miriam said. What happened next was the kind of thing that would make a very good Nollywood movie, which is why 2 years later Serena would sometimes laugh about it, sitting on her own couch in her own upgraded apartment with a glass of wine, thinking about how life had a way of writing its own dramatic scenes. Serena called Rachel from the supermarket parking lot. Rachel, who had always suspected, who had been biting her tongue for 5 years, who had once said, "There is something off about that man," and been told to mind her business. Rachel listened to the whole story without interrupting once. When Serena finished, there was a 2-second silence. Then Rachel said, "Give me 1 hour." Serena did not ask what she meant. She just said okay. She drove home. She put the birthday cake in the fridge. She changed out of her shopping clothes and into a simple, clean dress, because she was about to have the most important conversation of her life, and she was not going to have it looking scattered. She sat on her couch and she breathed in and out slowly, the way she had learned in a yoga class she had attended exactly once. Miriam arrived at 5:30 with the baby, whose name was Oliver and who was, despite everything, an extremely cute child. Rachel arrived at 5:45 with a bottle of water for Serena, and an expression on her face that said she had been ready for this day since approximately year 2 of the relationship. Serena's neighbor, Mrs. Adeyemi, came out of her apartment to ask what was happening, and was told firmly by Rachel that this was not her matter. At 6:15, Damien Hart knocked on Serena's door. He had brought flowers. Of course he had brought flowers, that was the thing about Damien. He always knew exactly what gesture to make at exactly the right moment, which was part of what had made him so convincing for so long. He was holding a small bunch of yellow roses, and he was smiling his good smile, the one that started in his eyes, the one that Serena had once described in her diary as the most beautiful smile she had ever seen on a human being. He stopped smiling when the door opened, and he saw not just Serena, but Miriam, standing in the living room with a baby on her hip. The yellow roses fell from his hand. There are certain moments in life when a person reveals exactly who they are. Not who they pretend to be, or who they have practiced being, or who they are when things are going well, but who they really actually are when everything collapses at once. Damien Hart in that moment was very small. He tried 3 things in quick succession. First, he tried confusion, looking between Serena and Miriam as though he had never seen either of them before, which would have been more convincing if his hands were not shaking. Second, he tried anger, raising his voice, saying that Serena had set him up, saying she had no right to drag his family into this, which was perhaps the most spectacularly wrong thing he could have said in that moment because it confirmed everything. Third, he tried tears, and these were perhaps real, or perhaps they were just what happened when a man ran out of other options. None of it worked. Rachel, who had been waiting 5 years for this, said only 5 words. "Damien, it is over." Miriam, who had been carrying this exhaustion for longer than anyone knew, said nothing at all. She just looked at her husband with the eyes of a woman who had already made her decision somewhere between the supermarket and this apartment, and was now simply watching it be confirmed. And Serena, who had bought a birthday cake with his name on it, who had worn red because it was his favorite color, who had spent 5 years trusting a man who was living an entirely different life behind her back. Serena opened the front door wider and said very calmly, "Please leave my house." He left. The aftermath of a betrayal is never a single moment. It is not like a wound that you receive and then treat and then it heals. It is more like discovering that the ground you have been standing on is not as solid as you thought, and then spending a long time figuring out how to walk on it again. Serena spent the first week inside her apartment. Rachel came every day, sometimes with food, sometimes just to sit. Serena's mother called every evening and said things that were meant to be comforting but sometimes missed the mark, because mothers are not always sure what to say when their daughter has been deceived for 5 years, and so they default to things like, "God will send your own," and "the right man is coming," which is well-meaning but not exactly what you want to hear when you are lying on your couch still processing the fact that the man you thought was yours had a wife and a baby the entire. She thought about all the little things she had explained away over the years. The times he was unavailable on public holidays. She had thought he was traveling. The times she had heard a baby crying in the background of a phone call and he had said it was the neighbor's child. She had believed him. The time she had found a small gold earring in his car and he had said it belonged to his cousin. And she, foolishly, charitably, lovingly, had believed that too. The earring had been Miriam's. And the receipt from the Harbor Grill, the dinner for 2, the wine, the chocolate fondant, that had been Miriam too. A birthday dinner for his wife. On the same Friday night he had told his girlfriend he was at a work function. Serena had been 1 phone call and 1 crumpled receipt away from the truth for 3 days. And she had not known it. In the days that followed, Serena's phone did not stop ringing. Not from Damien. He had the sense, at least, not to call. But word traveled fast in Lagos, the way it always does, through the invisible telephone lines that connect friends and cousins and neighbors and former classmates. 3 different people sent Serena voice notes saying they had heard something and wanted to know if she was all right. Serena read the messages and did not reply to most of them. The ones she replied to were from people who genuinely loved her. Rachel, her university roommate Sandra who lived in Abuja and called twice. Her cousin Beverly who took an Uber to her apartment with jollof rice and fried plantain and sat with her until midnight. These people she let in. It was Beverly who asked the question that stayed with Serena the longest. Beverly was practical, the way people who have survived their own difficult things become practical. She sat across from Serena and asked directly, "Were there signs? Things you saw and chose not to see?" There had been signs. Small ones. Easy to explain away. The fact that Damien never introduced her to his family. Not once in 5 years. The fact that he was never available on Christmas or Easter or New Year's Day. The fact that on 3 separate occasions she had seen a woman's name, Mimi, appear on his phone screen, and he had said it was his sister, and she had never once thought to verify. She had not been stupid. She had been trusting. She had believed that the man who held her hand in restaurants and remembered her favorite color was exactly who he said he was. And she had loved him with all of that belief intact. That was perhaps the most painful part. Not the deception, but the love that had been real on her side, given freely to someone who received it under false pretenses. What Serena did not know, what she only found out much later from Miriam herself, because the two women became something like unexpected friends in the way that survivors of the same storm sometimes do, was that Miriam had known something was wrong for nearly 2 years. Not the specifics, not Serena's name or face, but the quiet, certain knowledge that something in her marriage was not right. The late nights, the business trips that did not quite add up, the way Damien sometimes looked at his phone and took it to the bathroom. Miriam had found Serena's Instagram page by accident, 6 months before the supermarket. She had seen photos of a woman who looked happy, beautiful, and completely unaware. She had looked at those photos for a long time. She had thought about what to do. She had prayed about it. She had lost sleep over it. And then one afternoon, she had gone to the supermarket for groceries, and the woman from the photos had been standing in the checkout aisle, holding a birthday cake with her husband's name on it, and Miriam had known in that immediate, cellular way that the body sometimes knows things before the mind catches up, that this was the moment. She had walked up and introduced herself, not because she was brave, because she was tired. Damien Hart lost both women on the same day, which was, everyone agreed, no less than he deserved. Miriam filed for separation 3 weeks later. Her family supported her. Her mother came from Ibadan and stayed for a month and looked after baby Oliver and said very little about Damien except that she had never trusted him from the beginning. Miriam got a good lawyer. She was going to be fine, even if fine was going to take a while to become fully true. Serena, for her part, began rebuilding. She started with small things. She rearranged her apartment, which had always felt like a place where Damien might visit, into a place that was entirely hers. She threw away the red dress. Not because there was anything wrong with the dress, but because she wanted to. She started going to the gym because punching things on a bag in a clean room with music playing felt very, very good. She took a trip to Abuja with Rachel over a long weekend, and they ate suya at midnight and stayed up too late and laughed about things that were not quite funny yet but would be funny eventually. She got promoted at work because while all of this had been happening in her personal life, she had been very good at her job, and very good at her job was something no man could take from her. She was 29 now. She had 5 years of her life that had been built on a lie. But she also had 5 years of herself. Her own resilience, her own friendships, her own career, her own capacity to survive, that were entirely real. The last time Serena saw Damien was 8 months after the supermarket. She was having lunch with a colleague at a restaurant in 6 when he walked in. He was alone. He looked smaller than she remembered, or maybe she was just different now. Taller on the inside. He saw her from across the restaurant. He paused. He looked like he might walk over. Serena turned back to her lunch. She picked up her fork. She continued her conversation with her colleague about a new project at work. She did not give him another glance. Not because she was performing confidence for anyone watching, but because she genuinely found that she had nothing left to give him. Not anger, not grief, not even the satisfaction of letting him see that she was fine. She was fine. Quietly, solidly, without needing him to witness it. He left without approaching her. There is a version of this story where Serena is the victim, and that is all she is. Where the ending is about what was done to her, and the years she lost, and the tears she cried in her apartment in the weeks after the supermarket. That version of the story is true. It happened. Those tears were real. But there is another version. The one where Serena Cole is 29 years old, sitting in a restaurant in Victoria Island, eating jollof rice and laughing with her colleague, wearing a dress that is not red because today she felt like wearing blue, having built something from the wreckage of a lie, something that belongs to her alone. In Nollywood, every story has a lesson at the end. Sometimes the lesson is about trusting God. Sometimes it is about choosing better next time. Sometimes it is simply about the fact that people who lie eventually get stood in a doorway holding yellow roses while their entire double life collapses around their feet. But perhaps the most important lesson in Serena's story is the simplest one. She survived it. Not just survived, she continued. She went back to work on Monday. She answered her mother's calls. She planned a birthday party for Rachel. She got up each morning and made her bed and ate breakfast and went into the world, because that is what you do when the ground turns out to be sand. You find the solid places, you step on those, and you keep going. She had been the side chick for 5 years and she had not known it. She would have to live with that. But she would live with it as Serena. Whole, awake, and no longer standing at a bus stop in the rain waiting for someone else to rescue her. She had learned, at great cost and considerable pain, to come in from the rain herself. And that, in the end, was worth something.